The Wild West was a place of lawlessness and marked a unique and fascinating period in American history. Many are familiar with the tales of Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and other male outlaws whose stories shaped the rugged frontier of the Old West. Many don't know that there were female outlaws who were just as infamous as their male counterparts. Here you'll discover the tales of the resourceful female criminals who shot down the traditional notions of women's roles as homemakers and child rearers, and chose instead to lead lives of debauchery and scandal. Number 1. Pearl Hart. Born in Lindsay, Canada, in 1871, Hart attended an exclusive school. However, she enjoyed adventuring more than schoolwork. At age 17, Pearl eloped to Chicago with a gambler, Frederick Hart. But Frederick was abusive and Hart left him at age 22. She then made her way to Arizona, where she met a miner named Joe Boot. When Boot couldn't make enough from his mining job to support the pair, they turned to robbery. They developed a routine where Hart would lure a man into her room, and, once through the door, Boot would whack the unsuspecting gentleman on the head and rob him. However, this play was risky, and the couple was almost caught on several occasions. In 1899, Hart developed a plan to rob a stagecoach. More money, less risk. Hart cut her hair and dressed as a man. Boot held up the driver while Hart took over $400 from the passengers. After giving a little back to ensure the victims had enough money for food and a hotel, Hart and Boot rode gallantly away into the sunset, only to get lost in the desert. After several days of wandering, they desperately needed sleep, but when they woke, the sheriff and his posse had found them. They were caught a mere 3 miles from the scene of the crime. While she was being tried for her crimes, Hart is famous for saying this feminist phrase, "I shall not consent to be tried under a law in which my sex had no voice in making." Unfortunately, the judge didn't care, and Hart was tried and convicted anyway. Being the second woman to rob a stagecoach and the first one not to die while doing so, Hart instantly became the most famous woman in Arizona. Journalists came from all over to interview and photograph Hart with her gun. She received a pardon after 18 months. The official reason was that the penitentiary did not have accommodations for women, although rumor had it that Hart was pregnant, and the judge didn't want to have to explain how that had happened during her incarceration. After being released from prison, Hart had a brief stint in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, but lived the rest of her life under the radar of the law. Number 2. Laura Bullion, also known as the Rose of the Wild Bunch. Bullion was born into a life of crime. Her father, a Native American, was a bank robber, and Bullion, after spending her teenage years as a prostitute, joined the Wild Bunch gang and became known as the Rose of the Wild Bunch. Bullion sold stolen goods and made connections that provided the bunch with a steady supply of horses. She was romantically involved with several members of the gang, on and off. On certain occasions, she dressed like a man and joined the rest of the gang in train robberies. In 1901, she was arrested in St. Louis with $8,500 worth of stolen banknotes in her possession. When she was released from prison after 3.5 years, Bullion retired from her life of crime and became an interior designer in Memphis, Tennessee. Bullion died of heart disease in 1961. Her gravestone is embossed with a rose and thorny vines and reads, "The Thorny Rose." Bullion was the last surviving member of the Wild Bunch. Number 3. Belle Siddens, also known as Madame Vestal. Born and raised on a wealthy southern plantation to a politically powerful St. Louis family, Belle Siddens was the definition of a Southern belle. She employed her good looks during the Civil War and became a Confederate spy at 25. She was caught and imprisoned but pardoned after 4 months. She later married a gambling man, Newt Hallett, who taught her to play cards. Finding that she was naturally good at the game, Belle became famous as a dealer of the game 21. When her husband died of yellow fever and Siddens was forced to support herself, she followed the gold rush and set up shop in South Dakota. As the owner of her own dance hall, bar, and gambling establishment, Siddens began going by the nickname Madame Vestal. She met and fell in love with stagecoach robber Archie McLaughlin in her establishment. Once again, Siddens used her skills and beauty to become a spy and retract information from stagecoach drivers, which she then passed on to her lover. Unfortunately, Siddens' overconfidence got the best of her, and one night she let slip that there was going to be a robbery. McLaughlin was caught, tried, and hung. Siddens became a wandering drunk, the last record of whom was an arrest in San Francisco in 1881. Number 4. Rose Dunn, also known as Rose of the Cimarron. Dunn was born in Oklahoma in 1879 and educated at a convent in Wichita, Kansas. She was known for her good looks and charm. Her 2 older brothers became outlaws when she was young and taught her how to shoot and ride. Dunn became an outlaw when she fell in love with George Bittercreek Newcomb, a member of the Wild Bunch gang led by Bill Doolin. The Wild Bunch, also known as the Oklahombres, were known for robbing banks and holding up trains. All of its members eventually met a bloody end. Dunn participated in the gang by providing them with ammunition and supplies when members could not go to town. Dunn once saved Newcomb when United States Marshals wounded him. Legend says she dodged open fire and held off the Marshals with her own rifle until he could get to safety. Dunn's brothers, who had abandoned their careers as outlaws in favor of becoming bounty hunters, killed Newcomb for what some say was a $5,000 bounty for each brother. Dunn was later accused of being involved in Newcomb's death by telling her brothers his location, but Dunn and her brothers maintained her innocence. She was never prosecuted for her involvement with the gang and eventually settled down with a local politician.